Listen to this. So we think of Marilyn, who was every man's love affair with America. Marilyn Monroe, who was blonde and beautiful and had a sweet little rinky-dink of a voice and all the cleanliness of all the clean American backyards. She was our angel, this sweet angel of sex, and the sugar of sex came up from her like a resonance of sound in the clearest grain of a violin. Norman Mailer at his most purple in what he calls his novel biography of Marilyn Monroe, the girl from the orphanage who trudged doggedly up the road to stardom, pausing occasionally at a wayside casting couch to get her bearings. Mailer's book is more like a love letter to the late lamented goddess, almost an act of necrophilia. He describes her obvious charms with salivating relish and hates the men she married, Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, with the passion of an unsuccessful rival. What he tells us about Marilyn Monroe is not at all new. Indeed, he cribbed nearly all of it from other biographies. But what he tries to do, that's different from the other biographies, is to analyse and explain this paradoxical creature who was screwed by the movie industry and who herself screwed nearly all the people who helped her. Marilyn, says Mailer, was a movie star of the most stubborn secretiveness and flamboyant candour, a queen of a castrator who was ready to weep for a dying minnow. Beneath the little girl voice and the baby blue eyes, she was as tough as a hobnail boot and able to inspire the most violent hatred. Tony Curtis said that kissing her was like kissing Hitler, and after directing her in Some Like It Hot, Billy Wilder said it was weeks before he could look at his wife without wanting to hit her simply because she was a woman. Marilyn was a marriage wrecker, other people's as well as her own, and the inspiration for more masturbatory fantasies than Freud ever dreamed of. She had affairs, and Mailer mentions them all, with Brando and Sinatra and Yves Montand, and possibly Bobby Kennedy. And her death from an overdose of drugs in 1962 may have been an accident, suicide, or even, he says, murder. He also suggests, titillatingly, that somebody very important indeed may have been sleeping with her the night she died. It's a glossy, overwritten book, immensely readable, and lavishly illustrated with some splendid photographs. But in the end, Mailer fails. He doesn't explain Monroe, he merely expands the legend. But then nearly everyone who writes or talks about her does that, as Film 73 discovered when last year, the 10th anniversary of her death, we interviewed some of the people who knew her, people like screenwriter George Axelrod and film director Joshua Logan.
By the time Marilyn was ready to come back to Hollywood, we had, by that time, perfected, in our opinion, a vehicle for her in which she could really shine, in that she could do everything that she could do that was sexy and wonderful and delicious and exciting and tender and dirty and all the great things she could do, and still be just outside that pasteboard character that 20th had invented for her.
The moment the film is running in the camera, Marilyn acts. You cannot get her to stop it. Even if she would forget a line, which occasionally she did, not because she didn't know it, but because she was so critical of herself, that she would hate the way she'd read the last line and begin thinking about that instead of reading the line that was supposed to be said.
Difficulty in lines would be an understatement for Miss Monroe. Miss Monroe simply could not memorize anything. She could not memorize, when she lived on Lexington Avenue, which she did in New York, she could not memorize Lexington Avenue.
Joe Curtis, my assistant, would read her the line. We coached him to throw the line at her. She kept acting all through the coaching so that you didn't feel that she was listening to a prompt.
Joe Curtis's voice says, "I've always wanted love." He talks like a dialogue director. Marilyn says, "I've always dreamed." Joe, what the was you? Cut, but no one dare say cut. So he just says, "Go on, darling, go on."
It was really quite remarkable. There's several pauses like that in Bus Stop if you look carefully.